gland is, you can see it is a butterfly shaped. It is a butterfly shaped. Okay, it is a butterfly shaped, and the middle part is called isthmus. This is called isthmus, and there are the two lobes. And if you see properly into the microscope, you will see the thyroid gland is formed of follicles. It has the follicles, which are called follicles. Follicles inside. The whole thyroid gland is formed with follicles. Okay. So let's take one of these follicles outside, and you'll see that these follicles are having this type of linings of cells, this type of epithelial cells. Okay. So inside the follicles, you'll see some paste-like materials which are called colloid. Okay, these are called colloid. So thyroid gland is around 12 to 20 milligram, and it is in the center of the neck, just above your Adam's apple, over the trachea, below the larynx. Okay, and it is composed of follicles, and in the follicles there are thick paste-like materials called colloid material. This colloid material is made of thyroglobulin, which is a protein, thyroglobulin. Okay. So what are the hormones that are secreted by the thyroid gland? There are basically two important hormones, T3 and T4. Okay, T3 and T4. T3, as the name suggests, triiodothyronine, and T4 we call it thyroxine hormone. Apart from that, it also secretes another hormone called calcitonin, which is responsible for calcium metabolism. So we will not discuss calcitonin, we will basically discuss T3 and T4. So 93% of hormones in the body, they are thyroxine, 93%. And 7% are triiodothyroxine. But the most active part, which one is the most potent hormone out of this T3 and T4? It is the T3. And you'll see when we'll now go into the class, you'll see the most of the T4, before its action, they are again converted to T3. Finally, they are also converted to T3. So anyways, let's not confuse. We have two hormones which basically do all the functions of the thyroid gland. They are T3 and T4, out of which T3 is more potent. Okay, though it is less, but it is very, very potent. It is more strong in action than T4. Okay, T4 is called thyroxine, T3 is called triiodothyronine. Alright, so just in a nutshell, these are the thyroid hormones secreted by the thyroid gland, which is composed of follicles, and the follicles are again it is lined by epithelial cells, and it is composed of, inside there is colloid material. Now, as the long question, thyroid gland always comes with a long question. Okay, so you have to, when you introduce the thyroid gland, you have to write like this, and then you will start with how it is secretion. Thyroid gland synthesis. So next heading will be thyroid gland synthesis. How the thyroid hormone synthesis. So how the thyroid hormone is manufactured here in these follicles, right? Okay. So let's go. Now let's start with your diet. Okay. Normally we require 1 milligram per week. That is our dietary requirement. 1 milligram per week. What is we require? We require iodine in our diet. Okay. So thyroid hormone T3 and T4 are made of the basic substance needed for making of T3 and T4 is iodine. So that's why we need to have a constant iodine-rich food, because when you consume iodine-rich foods, then only we can have enough T3 and T4. Now, can anyone tell me what is any example of iodine-rich food here? Can you write it down? Okay, who know here what are the iodine-rich foods? Give me one example at least. Yes, very good, Daisy. It's the seafoods. So all the seafoods are rich in iodine, so you don't need to worry if you are consuming lot of seafoods. Plus nowadays the salt that are available in commercial market, they are all iodized salt. In earlier days, salts were not iodized. So that's why there were lots of cases of goiter. There is swelling of the thyroid gland. We'll come to that. Okay. So basic rich of iodine food is seafoods and dairy products like milk, yogurt, all those products, and seafood. They are rich in iodine. So let's assume that you consumed iodine. So we don't take iodine, we take iodide. Okay, remember that, iodide. So you have taken iodide, and very soon this iodide will be absorbed into the blood. So now they are absorbed into the blood. Okay. Now these follicles are surrounded by blood vessels. They are surrounded by blood vessels. As usual, every gland is surrounded by blood vessels. Okay, they are surrounded by blood vessels. So now this iodine will also reach from the blood circulation. It will go to the heart, and along with the circulation, it will reach this capillary networks. It will reach the capillary networks. Okay. Now, students, try to understand this. Iodine is in the blood from your food, right? But the T3 and T4, where they are made? They are made here in the center. They are made in this center of the follicles. They are made here. So we need now iodine to reach here, because without iodine, our gland cannot make T3 and T4. So this is the blood vessel, capillaries, and here is the iodide. Here is the iodide. Okay, here is the iodide. So iodide needs to travel from here to here. Okay. So first step in synthesis is called iodide trapping. Iodide trapping. So iodide from here. Okay, let me take one cell from here. Let me cut this portion. Okay, let me cut this portion. So this is the cell, and here there is the iodide. So we know that towards the lumen we call apical side, and this is the back side of the cell. I mean, this side of the cell is called basolateral cell, basolateral part. This is the basolateral part. So in the basolateral part, here there is a transporter mechanism, sodium iodide symport. Symport means when one molecule helps the other. Sodium iodide symporter mechanism. So iodide moves inside the cell. Iodide will move inside the cell, not alone, along with sodium ions. So iodine will move here. Iodide will move here inside the cell, but still it has not reached the cytoplasm. Remember that. It has just reached the cellular part here. So iodide has reached here along with sodium ions. So by sodium iodide symporter mechanism. And from here, so once it has reached inside the cell, now it has to be thrown into here from the apical membrane. Okay, from the apical border. So iodide will be then. So here there is a transporter molecule called pendrin. It comes as 1 mark question. Just remember the name, nice, because it's a nice name. Pendrin. So iodide will be transported by this transporter molecule called pendrin inside. Now finally, along with that, so how iodide is made? So iodide is transported here, sodium iodide transporter at the basolateral membrane, basolateral side, and then iodide is transported, thrown into the cytoplasm by this pendrin molecule. So once iodide moves here inside the cell, now this iodide cannot go back. It has no mechanism to go back. It cannot reverse. Once it is inside, it cannot move back. That's why this step is called iodide trapping. Okay, so once iodide is conjugated with sodium and pushed inside the cells, this particular iodide now cannot come back to the blood. There is no escape mechanism. There is no channel here, no iodide channel, nothing else. So this iodide is literally trapped, and we call this step as iodide trapping. So first step in the mechanism of thyroid hormone synthesis is iodide trapping. So how iodide trapping is, just you can draw this diagram also in the exam. You don't need to explain even. Okay, so iodide is transported with sodium iodide symporter mechanism, and then it is thrown into the cytoplasm by this pendrin which is a transporter molecule. Now finally the iodide is here. Iodide is here. Okay, that is I. So next step of iodide trapping is oxidization. Oxidization. So in the oxidization, this iodide will be converted to iodine. Will be converted to iodine. Okay, will be converted to iodine. So now this iodide will be converted to iodine. So this oxidization of iodide to iodine is called as oxidization step. And this conversion of iodide to iodine is done by one important enzyme called peroxidase. Now you have to know this enzyme because when you give anti-thyroid drugs, some of the anti-thyroid drugs, they are basically peroxidase inhibitors. Okay, they inhibit this peroxidase. Like carbimazole, methimazole, these are very common anti-thyroid drugs. So they basically block this step. Okay, they basically block this peroxidase enzyme. Okay, so because if we don't convert iodide to iodine, this thyroid hormone cannot be made. Okay, so we need an enzyme called peroxidase also inside the thyroid gland. Alright, so as a result now iodine is made here inside the follicles. Now we have plenty of iodine inside our follicles. Okay, so this is the number 2 step. Number 3 step is called organification. Organification. So what is organification? Now we know that this colloid is present inside the follicles, and inside the follicles there are thyroglobulin. These are the proteins normally found in colloid. Colloid is made of thyroglobulins. And if you have studied biochemistry, then in thyroglobulin is made of tyrosine molecules. Okay, tyrosine. So now this iodine will combine with the tyrosine. So here what happens in organification, iodine will combine with the tyrosine. Okay, it will combine with tyrosine. So what it will form? One iodine molecule combining with one tyrosine molecule, we call it as monoiodotyrosine. Okay, we call it monoiodotyrosine or MIT. Okay, we call it monoiodotyrosine. So third step is organification. So in organification, iodine combines with tyrosine of thyroglobulin and forms MIT. Now we have plenty MIT formed here. MIT. MIT means one iodine and one tyrosine, monoiodotyrosine. Okay. Number 4 step in formation of in thyroid hormone synthesis is coupling. Number 4th step is called, we call that the coupling. Now we have to make couples from here. So once MIT is for monoiodo, so one MIT combines with, you say, another MIT, and what will form? Diiodotyrosine, right? It will form DIT, diiodotyrosine. One iodine, another iodine combines and form DIT. Then one MIT, this is just a simple maths. One iodine plus one iodine plus one iodine, 2 iodine. So one iodine, again it will combine with DIT, it becomes 3 iodine. We don't call 3 iodine, we call T3. Okay, then one DIT, this is 2 iodine plus another 2 iodine, it forms T4. So in this way T3 and T4 are formed. It's just simple maths. Okay, there is nothing to wonder how it is formed. So they are just random, they are mixing with each other. They are combining. You are making so many MITs, now MIT will combine with MIT, DIT. Now one MIT will combine with DIT, T3 hormone. One DIT will combine with DIT, T4 means 4 iodine, T3 means 3 iodine. Okay, and ultimately these T3 and T4 are formed. Right? So what we got here finally, final product is here T3 and T4. T3, T4 are formed inside the follicles. Where are they formed? They are formed inside the follicles. So now final step is to now we have to release, we have to make these hormones go to the blood supply so that they can reach the target tissues. So now final step is the release. Okay. So let's take one follicle outside. So this is one follicle, right? And which is lined by epithelial cells. And here T3 and T4 are formed. And here is the surrounding blood supply. So this T3 and T4, they will be cleaved. Means you have to chop. Now you have to remove this because T3 and T4 are attached inside the thyroglobulin. It's like a dough. You have to, the T3 and T4 are inside the dough. Now you have to pull the T3 and T4 out of this thyroglobulin. So there is an enzyme called protease enzyme. Here there is a protease enzyme. Protease enzyme. This protease enzyme will cleave this T3 and T4. Will cleave this T3 and T4. And from here it will be released into the blood. Okay, it will be cleaved. So as soon as this T3 and T4 reach into the blood, 99% of them immediately bound to proteins. Bound to proteins. Bound to proteins like globulin. Like globulins. Only 1% of them remains free. So 99% remain here with combined globulin. Combined globulin. Only 1% remains free. And you have to know this thing that because all the thyroid hormone actions are done by free hormones, not the bound hormone. It doesn't matter how much bound hormones you have. But if you have more bound free hormones, then you will have more thyroid hormone action. If you have less free hormones, there will be less action. Remember that. Because you know that free people can do more work than the committed people. Right? Because they are free, their mindset is free. So same way, this 1% of the T3 and T4, they are free, lying free in the blood, which do the main action. Okay? So that's why when we do the thyroid function test, when we analyze the thyroid hormone in the blood, you will see in the report, you will see that T3, T4, it will be written, and in the bracket it will be written free. Okay? So like T4 is normally 20. T4 is normally 20. As you know, T4 is more found in the blood than T3. So T4 is normally 20 picomole per liter, and T3 is normally 5 picomole per liter. So this is the normal range, normal level of T3 and T4. So what we are talking about, we are talking about the free T3 and T4 hormones, right? So anyways, we will not go to here, but I am recapping the mechanism of synthesis of thyroid hormones. Number 1 step is iodide trapping. Number 2 is oxidation. Number 3 is organification. Number 4 is coupling. Number 5 is release. Number 6 is bound. So this bound to proteins. So why I am telling you this, why it is bound to, why it is so important. Now listen, if you have more protein, the more protein will bound to T4 and T3, right? So less T4 and T3 will be available. And if you have less protein in your blood, then more T3 and T4 will become free. So that's why when we assess the T3 and T4 level, you should also assess the blood protein level, because it is related to the normal amount of globulin found in the blood. More globulin available, more T3 and T4 will bind. So free T4, T3 will be less, and it may result in low hypothyroidism, means low thyroid gland function. I hope you are getting my point. Okay, so if it is less protein, more free, this level may go up. Okay, if we have less protein amount in our blood, this level may go up. So you have to also assess before declaring someone hyper or hypothyroidism. You should also assess the the blood protein level. How much is the normal protein level? You should also this thing. And so what happened? Yes. And also it is influenced by the other sex hormones and many other hormones. So before declaring someone as a hyper or hypo, you have to exclude all the other conditions. Okay. So this is the mechanism of synthesis of thyroid hormone. Now we go to the proper regulation. Now next step is that long question will come. It is as a regulation. How this thyroid hormones is regulated? Okay, we already discussed in the last class, but I am just giving a view. Regulation. If you remember, hypothalamus will secrete one hormone, thyroid releasing hormone. So hypothalamus will first initiate this thing. When we need thyroid hormone secretion, hypothalamus will release thyroid releasing hormone. This thyroid releasing hormone will go to the anterior pituitary gland, will come to the anterior pituitary gland, and it will stimulate the anterior pituitary, which will release thyroid stimulating hormone. This thyroid stimulating hormone will go to the blood supply and it will stimulate these follicles. Okay, it will stimulate this follicle. Which step is mostly influenced? Remember, thyroid stimulating hormone particularly influence the iodide trapping stage. Though it influences all the stages, but basically it influences most potently is the iodide trapping. So more THS, more thyroxine, T3 and T4 hormone synthesis. Remember that. Now this THS is influencing this thyroid gland, and as a result our body is making lot of T3 and T4. So when these T3 and T4 rise above the normal level, so THS is secreted and our thyroid gland is making T3 and T4. It has to be a limit, right? These are the normal limits. But if it is rising, when the T3 and T4 are rising in the body more than normal level, then anything in excess is not good for health. So if T3 and T4 is made more, then what will happen? It will give a negative feedback mechanism to the hypothalamus. We call it negative feedback mechanism. So because of that negative feedback mechanism, now hypothalamus will secrete less T3 TRH. As a result, THS will stop and T3 T4 will come down. Okay, I hope you got my point. Whenever this T3 and T4 are increased, there will be a negative feedback mechanism which will influence the hypothalamus. It will tell the hypothalamus, send a signal that don't make any more TRH. Then it will stop making TRH. Then when there will be no TRH, no TSH. Okay, when there will be no THS, this T3 T4 level will go simultaneously. Eventually it will go down. Okay, you have to understand this negative feedback mechanism. Why? Because when we assess the T3 T4 level and we find a patient that his T3 T4 level is high, then what we say? Generally we say this is a case of hyperthyroidism. Hyper means excess, hypo means low. So when you see the blood report of a thyroid patient, how will you declare him hyperthyroidism? When you will get T3 excess, T4 excess, right? This is so simple. And when you will also say what will happen to the THS level in hyperthyroidism. What will happen to this THS, thyroid stimulating hormone? Will it be more or will it be less? Now I told you the negative feedback mechanism, that when T3, T4 increase, the THS decrease, right? That's a feedback loop. It's trying to control. That's how the thyroid hormone is regulated. Now in case of hyperthyroidism, you will see in the blood report that T3 is high, T4 is high and THS is down. You cannot have three things together. The THS is high, T3 is high, T4 is, you cannot, this is a very rare scenario. Okay, in any hyperthyroidism cases, you'll see in the lab report that T3 is very high, T4 is high and THS should be less. Because of this negative feedback mechanism, THS is less. But T3, T4 is very high. Okay, that is one hyperthyroidism. Reverse in the same vice versa in hypothyroidism, you will see that there will be less T3, that is less than 5, less than 20, and you see THS is very high. Now what will happen? So, okay, this is hypothyroidism case when both these are low and THS is high. Now long time back in India and Nepal, in the Himalayan belt, when there was no idea of iodized salt, then many people living in those Himalayan areas, they have a swelling of neck. So when there is a thyroid gland is swelled, we call that condition as a goiter. You must have heard this term, goiter. Goiter means just swelling of thyroid gland. We don't know it is hypo or hyper. And goiter is because of iodine deficiency foods. Because that land in the Himalayan mountain, this is mostly there are no iodine in that land. So whatever they are eating all the food they are eating, they are growing in the crops, they are deficient of iodine, right? So after that, lots and lots of cases of goiter, the iodized salt came into the concept. So just imagine why I am telling you this. So let's imagine there is no iodine in the diet. Now what will happen? No iodine in the diet means T3, T4 will go down, right? Because you cannot make T3 and T4 low because of no iodine in the diet, right? So if T3 and T4 will go down, what will happen to this? THS will be stimulated, right? There will be more enough THS. THS is coming in high amount. Let's secrete T3, secrete T4. Why you are not making T3 and T4? You don't know there is lack of iodine or not. But THS will come in heavy amount because of the loop. Low T3 and T4, it will stimulate the hypothalamus. It will send a signal hypothalamus. Then listen, we are low. So more TRH will come and give pressure to the anterior pituitary gland. Release THS. Anterior pituitary gland will release more THS. But there is no iodine. It cannot make thyroid gland. But so THS level is going up. Now when THS is going up, what will happen? It influences the follicles. So as a result, these follicles will become big in size. And the thyroid gland will big in size. What we call as goiter. Okay. So a goiter, if you take a sample blood report of a goiter patient, you will find that T3 is less, T4 is less, THS is more. Because this increased THS is stimulating the thyroid follicles. And these thyroid follicles are growing in size. And the thyroid gland becomes big. Right? So thyroid gland grows big because of increased THS. THS can increase when there is low T3 and T4. Because it's a feedback mechanism. When more T3 and T4, it will down. When less T3 and T4, it will increase. Because its purpose is to stimulate the thyroid gland. Right? So that's why when you will understand the disease later in the goiter, you will see there is increased THS which stimulate the thyroid gland. And as a result, thyroid gland swells. And it becomes, we call it a goiter. Okay, we'll come to that part later. So how this thyroid hormone is regulated, you have to just write this flowchart. Hypothalamus will secrete TRH. TRH will come to the anterior pituitary and it will anterior pituitary will release THS. THS will come to the thyroid gland and it will make T3 and T4. So and then T3, T4 will be made, and when it will reach the normal level and it will start going up, then it will give a negative feedback mechanism and this secretion will be stopped, this secretion will be stopped, and again T3, T4 will go down. So every day there is like this, it is controlled. When it is more, it is less. When it is less, it is more. And the level is controlled. So that's how the T3, T4 hormones are regulated, right? So that's how the regulation. Now let's try to understand what is hypo and hyperthyroidism. Before understanding the hypo and hyper, you must understand what are the functions of thyroid gland. So number one function, the thyroid hormone, they influence the growth. Skeletal growth. Skeletal, the bone grows. Like the growth hormone, thyroid hormone also influence the growth. Number two, it central nervous system development. CNS development. That's why when thyroid hormone is down, growth is also stopped and there is also IQ is also down or mentally retarded. Number three is very important function. It controls the BMR, basal metabolic rate. Basal metabolic rate. So what is basal metabolic rate? So anything you are burning in your body, okay? So basal metabolic rate, if you are cooking something in the kitchen, then you have a gas knob, right? You are burning the Fiji gas, and whatever the gas you are burning, then you have a knob. You can make it high flame, low flame, right? You have in the kitchen there is a high, medium, low. This is suppose high, this is medium, this is low. When you put the high flame, and the gas will burn more. When you have low flame, gas will burn low, right? If you put a high flame in the gas, and if you put the knob here, high flame, then what will happen? Your gas will burn very fast. So more gas will burn, and the flame will be big, more heat will be produced, right? So the thyroid hormone, the T3 and T4, what they do? They control this flame, they control this knob, they control this BMR. So just like the kitchen, in our cells we have mitochondria, right? Mitochondria is the powerhouse. It utilizes the oxygen, like you use the gas. It utilizes oxygen and it makes the food. What are the food components? Carbohydrate, fats and proteins. So when thyroid hormone will be secreted more, T3 and T4 will be more, there will be more increased burning of this fuel, increased burning of carbohydrate. Increased burning of carbohydrate means you are cooking in a high flame. We don't say burning, but we will say increased utilization of glucose. Increased utilization of fats. Increased fats utilization. Okay, so more T3 and T4, it will go into high, less T3, T4 go into low. So when it will increase, your mitochondria are in a high flame mode. So it will burn more glucose and more fats. Okay, so when you are burning more, obviously more heat will be produced, so increased heat will be produced. So those people who have increased T3 and T4 level, they are always sweating. They never feel cold. They never feel cold because their BMR is so high that their body is producing enough heat to fight against any sort of cold. Because their body is very hot, they are producing a lot of heat. Because of increased T3, T4 level, he is utilizing lots of glucose and fats. That is number 1 point. Number 2, listen, now he is burning it fast. He is utilizing so much of oxygen. So obviously if he is utilizing lots of glucose and protein, lots of glucose and fats, obviously he will feel hungry frequently. So frequent hunger. So these are those type of people who eat a lot or never gained weight. Okay? You may have some people inside your group also, but don't think you are having thyroid gland. That's natural also. So those people who have T3 and T4 are high, they eat a lot, but they never gain weight because everything is consumed. Everything is consumed to produce heat. So heat is going out for sweating. They are sweating a lot. And they never gain weight. Instead, they may lose weight. They may lose weight and they are always heat intolerance. They cannot tolerate heat. Even in cold, they will not wear any sweater, anything. They feel always warm. Okay, they are always sweating. So that means they have a high BMR. And who controls our BMR? Thyroid hormone. Okay. So this T3 and T4, how they act? Now listen, this T3 and T4, when they come into the blood, I am talking about free T3 and T4, they will move inside the cell, they will go into the cell. Where in the cell? They will go inside the nucleus of the cell. So when these T3 and T4 reach inside this, sometimes it comes as a 1 mark question, what is the receptor for T3 and T4 in the cell? Remember the receptor for T3 and T4, they are nucleate receptor because they are present in the nucleus. So the name of the receptor is called retinoid receptor. Though it has nothing to do with retina, it's a retinoid receptor. So T3 and T4 will attach to the retinoid receptor here, and then there will be enough increase making of messenger RNA by increasing the transcription process. This mRNA, messenger RNA will then produce lots and lots of proteins. These proteins will do all the work. So when T3, T4 is released, they go to the cells, they go inside the nucleus, and there are lots and lots of specific proteins are formed. We don't have a name for those proteins. There are multiple proteins are formed. These proteins control this BMR. What will happen? When T3, T4 is high, the BMR will be increased. Means if there is a case of hyperthyroidism, a hyperthyroidism patient, he will have increased appetite. Okay, now let me change the language. He will have increased appetite, but loss of weight. Means he will eat a lot, but he will not gain weight. He will lose weight. That is number 1 point. Number 2, he will be heat intolerant. He will be always sweating. If you handshake with him, he will have sweaty palms. Okay. So that is about BMR. And what will happen to, so why the BMR is increased? Because you are utilizing lots and lots of glucose, you are utilizing lots and lots of fats. So that is also one thing, that hyperthyroidism people or patient, they don't have high cholesterol level. You cannot have a high cholesterol in presence of high T3, T4, because T3, T4 uses all the fats. It will consume all the fats, it will burn the fats, and produce energy. So you cannot have high T3 and T4 and you also have high cholesterol level. You cannot have both. But if you have low T3, T and 4, then you can have high cholesterol. That's why to be noted that sometimes your patient will find a high cholesterol level. High cholesterol level. You'll get this type of people. And the person will say, I don't eat any fats. I am very particular about my diet. But why my cholesterol level is going up? Then you should always check what? You should always check T3 and T4 level. Because if T3 and T4 level will be down, less fats utilization. So when fats will be utilized less, they will be deposited, right? And as a result, there will be high cholesterol. There will be high cholesterol running in the blood. That is also one factor. Other than that, what are the functions of T3, T4? Utilization of carbohydrate, fats. Right. So these are the normal functions of T3, T4. So what is happening in hypothyroidism now? Hypothyroidism means T3 less, T4 less, THS high. That is hypothyroidism. So similar like hypothyroidism, these are hypothyroid patients are those people who always feel cold, whether it is sunny weather or 40 degrees centigrade outside, but they always feel cold. Little bit of breeze, they feel cold. Okay. Cold intolerance. Now this is a medical syndrome that when you study many things, you feel like you are having those things. So please don't go for that. You are just a medical student, okay? Don't think you are having this type of things. Because 50% of people will have cold intolerance, 50% people will have heat intolerance. So don't think about these things. Just you study as a doctor. Don't study as a patient. So this is a cold intolerance. So these are people who cannot tolerate cold. Even with little breeze, they will wear sweaters. Even hot and humid conditions, they are wearing a jacket. You will find many people in the market. The next is increased weight gain. They will say, I don't eat anything. I don't eat a lot. But why I am gaining weight? Because you are gaining weight because you have low T3 and T4 level. So in any cases of weight gain of patients, when patients are saying that I am gaining weight, though I don't eat a lot, then what you will check? Number one, you have to check T3 and T4. In hypothyroidism, T3 and T4 are less, and as a result, there is increased weight gain. Now you have to understand this. Why there is increased weight gain? Because he is not utilizing, because it is in a low flame mode. His body or her body is not utilizing glucose, not utilizing fats. So everything is being stored, and he is gaining weight. Okay. Then what else? Cold intolerance. And so in hypothyroidism, what also there will be like what is it? In ladies, yes, there will be oligomenorrhea. Oligo means less. So menstrual blood will be also decreased. Okay, there will be less blood secretion, and menstrual dates are almost always the menstrual timings are postponed, delayed menstruations, less blood coming in menstruations. They also result to hypothyroidism. But if hypothyroidism occurs in children, we know what will happen. Then there will be, we call that condition as a cretinism. Just for as a term, it's called cretinism, means decreased growth with mental retardation. You can say cretinism. Okay, I'll show you the pictures, don't worry. So these are the cretinisms. And what else? Now how will you differentiate between one more thing before I go is carpal tunnel syndrome. Now it is very much popular, though we don't know how to connect to it. Hypothyroidism, but hypothyroidism patients do have carpal tunnel syndrome. Now if you remember from your anatomy class, what is carpal tunnel syndrome? You heard of it, carpal tunnel syndrome, right? This is a median nerve disorder, right? This is a median nerve disorder. So carpal tunnel syndrome means median nerve is problematic. So median nerve supplies the thumb, this one, and half of this. So 1, 2, 3 and half. So these are supplied by median nerve. So what happens in hypothyroidism? There is, we know in hypothyroidism there is maybe swelling, there may be collection of, sometimes there is collection of interstitial fluid. Edema is also common in hypothyroidism. Okay, why it is that concept came from? In hypothyroidism there is hyaluronic acid and chondroitin sulfate. They combine with protein and increase the interstitial fluid. Interstitial fluid. So when this interstitial fluid is increased, they may compress the median nerve. So when the median nerve is compressed, when the median nerve is compressed, which supplies these branches. So the patient will complain of what? Pain in 1, 2, 3 and half, pain, weakness, numbness, and the most important complaint, they will say, I can't grip. So when they will give these fingers to grip, they will have a loose grip. So things might fall off from their hand because of weak grip. We need all the 5 fingers to have a good grip. But when this 1, 2, 3 and half fingers from the thumb side, they become weak, the grip also becomes weak. So pain, numbness, tingling sensations, weak grip are all called carpal tunnel syndrome. What are the most common complaint of normal causes? Normally it happens during pregnancy, obesity and RA, rheumatoid arthritis. Pregnancy, obesity and rheumatoid arthritis. These are 3 main common causes of carpal tunnel syndrome. And now the 4th is hypothyroidism, which is also involved in causing carpal tunnel syndrome. Though there is not so direct connection, a lot of researches are going on, but we know till now that hyaluronic acid is formed in increased amount, chondroitin sulfate is formed in increased amount, then they combine with protein and they deposit in interstitial fluid. And we know protein has an oncotic pressure. So when protein is deposited in interstitial fluid, they draw the fluid from the plasma. As a result, there is edema. Okay. Now that is why hypothyroidism patient people, you will see there will be edema on the lower lid. Okay, there will be periorbital edema, this baggy eyelids, like in which you have to distinguish from kidney failure patients also. We'll see that pain. So because of that edema, sometimes the median nerve is compressed. Sometimes the median nerve will be compressed. So if you compress this median nerve right here, you'll feel some tingling sensations. You'll feel the tingling sensation, even if you're compressing the median nerve like this. And when in long run of life there is edema here, and it's compressing the median nerve, so these 3 fingers are becoming weak. So even if you play with my one thumb, I'm pressing my median nerve, my 3 fingers become weak. I cannot grip now. It's become very weak. Okay, so that's the concept of carpal tunnel syndrome. And what else? The thyroid hormone, especially the T3 and T4, they increase the CNS sensitivity. The central nervous system is highly excitable. Central nervous system is excited. So more in T3 and T4, they will excite the central nervous system. So more T3 and T4 in the blood, more excitation. So in hyperthyroidism patient, you will see when you observe the patient clearly, they will be always restless. They are always in a panic mode. Okay, they will be restless and panic mode. They will be very anxiety kind of thing. And when you see their hand, they will be in hyperthyroidism patient, you will find tremor. Okay, you'll find tremor. Okay? So if I put a piece of paper in a hyperthyroidism patient, it will be just put a piece of paper and you see this shaking. It means tremor is there. So this tremor will be found in increased T3, T4 level. So when a patient comes with this type of things, just put a piece of paper. Just put a piece of paper. If the paper is moving, it means his T3, T4 is high. Provided he don't have Parkinson's disease, you have to exclude other things. You have to exclude look at his gait, other things, okay? And the most important thing about T3 and T4 is it influences our heart. Don't forget about heart. So T3 and T4, they increase the heart rate, increase the force of contraction. Okay, they increase the force of. So in hyperthyroidism, you will see always tachycardia. You cannot see a hyperthyroid patient and a pulse rate of 72 beats per minute. Then that is not hyperthyroidism patient. So if you find a tremor and we found the pulse is 72, that's not hyperthyroidism cases. So you have to connect with these things, The heart rate is increased. T3 and T4 will significantly increase the heart rate and increase the force of contraction. Heart will pump more. So heart will pump more. So because of increased pumping of the heart also, they may complain of palpitation, anxiety, restlessness, all those things, and lack of sleep. You cannot sleep if your heart is pumping in a high volume. Okay, so this is also one thing that you have to notice. In the heart, there will be increased heart rate, increased force of contraction in hyperthyroidism. That's why one treatment of hyperthyroidism is also beta blockers. Beta blockers like propranolol. We also give propranolol or beta blocker in the T3, T4 in hyperthyroidism cases, so that his heart rate goes down. Because heart, we know in the heart there is beta receptors here. So these beta receptors are influence the SA node. So if you can block these beta receptors, so beta receptors are activated by sympathetic nerves. So if you can block these beta receptors, heart rate will go down. So beta blockers are also used in hyperthyroidism cases when they have palpitation. Okay, this is also one. So they will have tremor, they will have they will have increased heart rate, increased respiratory rate, and so these are the hyperthyroidism. So similarly in hypothyroidism cases, now I don't need to say separately about hypo or hyper. This is hyper. In hypo, this will be less. In hypo, it will be less. So as hyperthyroidism patient, people loses weight. Hypothyroidism patient, they gain weight. Okay, so hyperthyroidism patient, they have increased appetite, but less weight gain. So similarly, hypothyroidism patient, no weight, no appetite, but increased weight gain. So these are the basically clinical features of hyperthyroidism and hypothyroidism.